Today we'll be talking about the Renters' Bill of Rights. This white paper was originally introduced by the White House in January 2023, and it's been on landlords' minds across the nation ever since. I am joined by Samantha Yadav today to discuss this important piece of legislation that could be coming down the pipeline. So, Samantha, have you heard of the Renters' Bill of Rights?
I have heard of it, and I have so many questions, so I am pumped that you are here to answer all my questions. First of all, what is the Renters' Bill of Rights? What is it?
So this is a collection of ideas, in fact 5 principles, that the White House has put together in order to combat some of the issues that they are seeing on a national scale for renters.
Okay, so these are 5 laws?
5 principles for now. Nothing is legally binding. This is more a set of ideas that they want the public to know about as they continue their research and finalize what the actual legislation could be.
Got it. Why do we need a Renter Bill of Rights?
It might give landlords pause, but there's actually only one national bill that protects renters, which is the Fair Housing Act. Everything else is really piecemeal, including protections for domestic violence victims and a whole slew of other folks who really need that kind of crucial protection.
And the Fair Housing Act, that's focused specifically on discrimination and avoiding discrimination in housing, but this is different.
This is different. It does build on longstanding principles like the Fair Housing Act, but it introduces other ideas to fully protect renters as they move through the rental process.
I think we should get into it. You mentioned there's 5.
There are
so
5.
The first one.
The first one is access to safe, quality housing that people can live and thrive in. So inherently, the government wants people to provide housing that isn't going to harm them.
So safe, quality housing that they can thrive in.
Yes, and afford, which is really important. Because during the COVID-19 pandemic, we actually saw that nationally, rents increased around 26% on average.
So that's the first one. Safe, and we can thrive, and it's affordable.
And it's
Those
affordable.
are the 3 key points of the first one. What's the second one?
The second one is a principle regarding clear and fair leases. So this particular principle is crucial because leases are the living document that bind you and your tenant together, right? But unfortunately, there have been bad actors who have inserted clauses that forbid people from seeking help or finding a solution to big issues. They also do things like write in policies that really cut away at the renter's rights without clarifying what it actually means to the person who's signing it. So there's a renewed focus on making sure that the lease is clear and easily understood so that the renter understands what their obligations and expectations are.
So you said something about clear leases that are easy to understand. Now, I've had leases that range from 24 pages to 50 pages, depending on the addendums and the attachments and all the things. Is there a plan in place to make lease agreements more understandable for renters, maybe not so much legalese involved in them?
Yeah, and actually that's a perfect segue into the third principle, which focuses on renter education and the communication of their rights. So landlords are going to have to take on the responsibility to make sure that tenants understand what they're signing. But beyond that, they also need to provide access to resources that can help a tenant. Because at the end of the day, your goal should be to have a lease that is clear, easy to understand, and outlines everything that you are responsible for and that the tenant is responsible for.
And it's definitely recommended that you discuss the lease terms with your renter to make sure you're on the same page as to what you're agreeing to and things of that nature. And so the third principle is access, education, resources. So the landlord is responsible for providing those to the renter. What could I provide to my renters to help them out?
The resources that you can provide as a landlord are a bit patchwork, and it's going to depend on where you're located. So I would recommend looking up mediation services in your city or county. Oftentimes there are free programs for landlords and tenants to work through issues as they need to, but those same offices often have folks who can help out with lease interpretation or otherwise have connections to government bodies that can make sure that everybody's on the same page with this kind of important legal document.
And also, if the tenants understand the lease agreement, you're less likely to have conflict with them down the road, establishing what I know is your favorite topic, the positive landlord-tenant relationship.
Yes, absolutely. When everybody understands what they are obligated to do, it makes the relationship so much smoother from the get-go. And allowing your tenants to ask questions of the lease and even try and negotiate isn't a bad thing. It might give you pause, but it's going to strengthen your relationship, and that could lengthen their stay, which means a shorter vacancy cycle, less money out of your pocket to find the next tenant.
All sounds good to me so far. What's number 4?
The fourth one is actually a little bit surprising. It's the right to organize. So unfortunately, what tenants see on a national scale is that when they organize against their property manager or whoever might be giving them trouble at that time, there is an inordinate amount of pushback. And technically that's illegal, even without any further protections from a renter's Bill of Rights, because Americans have the right to organize. But we have seen historically that it can get really nasty for the tenant in question, and they can lose their housing because they participate in organizations or strikes against their property manager. So this really just solidifies that they have the right to raise their voices when it comes time, right, in that kind of civil discourse, and you cannot penalize them as a result if this becomes law.
It would also seem to me that if we're having clear and fair leases and we are providing education and resources to our renters, that maybe we wouldn't get to the point of needing to organize and protest.
Yeah.
It's interesting how that all ties together, but that's the first four.
First four.
What's number 5?
The fifth principle aims to tackle evictions. So specifically, it is looking to prevent and reduce the number of evictions by offering other activities to move through issues that landlords and tenants are having. I mentioned mediation services earlier. That is a big component of this principle, but also looking at things to really help both parties understand their obligations once again and avoid the headache that the eviction process causes. This principle might be the favorite of landlords because, as we know, evictions are expensive. So by providing more resources to avoid the eviction process, landlords stand to benefit. And bright side, so do their tenants because they remained housed. So very excited for this one. Basically, the government will be looking into different avenues to divert people away from evicting whenever possible. But it does not outlaw evictions. So that is still going to be an option on the table. You'll just have more options to choose from.
So why are landlords against the Renter Bill of Rights? It sounds like all of these things are, yes, geared towards protecting renters, but also protects the landlord in the end. So why are landlords upset about it?
It's a tricky situation. I mean, historically, we have looked at the landlord-tenant relationship as being super combative. It's not the reality of the situation, though. In fact, when you follow a set process and you treat your tenants like professional relationships, you can have really successful long-term connections with people who then even refer their friends to your vacant unit. So I think that the reason landlords are so curious about this Bill of Rights right now is because it's 19 pages long. Most people don't want to sit down and read all 19 pages and try and work through what it could mean for them. So it's a lot of hearing about it from the headlines and not really getting a deep dive into what the actual paper says. And there is a misconception that it exists in its current form as a law when, as we've discussed, it's just ideas for now. But by and large, as of now, nothing to stress about. Just be aware of what could be coming. However, if people do want to read about it, I took the plunge. I read all 19 pages for our audience. If you'd like to read my summary, it is available on our blog. The link is going to be in the description, and go to turbotenant.com/blog.